Have you ever finished a movie or a book and just sat there thinking, wait, did that actually happen? You know that feeling, right? Where the rug gets pulled out from under you? Well, that's not an accident. It's a deliberate technique, and it works by hacking the most fundamental thing your brain does, telling stories. So today, we're going to dive into the science of how our brains literally build reality, and more importantly, how very clever writers can hijack that process. But to really get how that works, we have to start with a bigger question. Why do we even need stories in the first place? Well, according to writer Will Storr, it's all about solving a huge, kind of terrifying existential problem. Yeah, pretty cheery, right? Storr kicks off his book, The Science of Storytelling, with this absolutely brutal truth. When you zoom all the way out, our lives are just this tiny flash in the pan, totally doomed to be forgotten. It's a pretty scary void to stare into. So how do we cope with that? How do we get out of bed every morning and not just fall into a pit of despair? Storr argues that the answer is actually really simple, but incredibly powerful. It's story. Story is the cure. See, our brain is basically a story processor, not a logic processor. It takes all the random, chaotic, and frankly, often bleak stuff that happens in life, and it edits it. It spins it into a narrative that we can actually handle. Stories distract us, they give us goals to chase, and they create this wonderful illusion of meaning, casting us as the hero in our own little movie. Okay, so if our brain is constantly telling us a story, how does it actually build the world that the story happens in? This is where things get really, really strange. Let's just start with a pretty radical idea. That solid, real, beautiful world you see all around you right now, you're not actually experiencing it directly. Not at all. Instead, just picture it. Your brain is locked away in the complete, silent darkness of your skull. It gets these little electrical pings from your senses, and it uses that data to build a predictive model, a simulation of what it thinks the world is supposed to be like. In fact, neuroscientists have a name for this, and it's fantastic. They call it a controlled hallucination. So what you think of as reality isn't the world itself. It's just an internal story your brain is telling you, one that it's updating all the time. Now, here's what's so mind-blowing. Look at how little of your experience is based on what's actually coming in through your senses. It's tiny. Your senses are really just fact-checkers for the model your brain has already built. This is exactly why you can watch a video of people passing a basketball and completely miss a guy in a gorilla suit walking right through the middle of the screen. Your brain decided the gorilla wasn't part of the story, so it just edited him out. Now, this whole world-building thing doesn't just apply to physical stuff like basketballs and gorillas. It's absolutely crucial for how we navigate our social world. But here's the catch. Our models of other people, they're often wrong. And that, my friends, is where all the drama comes from. We use this amazing skill called theory of mind to create models of what's going on inside other people's heads. It's how we cooperate and connect. The thing is, our ability to do it accurately is, well, it's surprisingly bad. Get this. The research is pretty clear that even with the people we know best, our partners, our closest friends, we're only correctly guessing what they're thinking and feeling about 35% of the time. For strangers, it's way lower, like 20%. All these constant misinterpretations, these flawed models we have of each other, that's the engine of conflict. It's the source of pretty much all drama, both in real life and, of course, in the stories we love. Okay, so just to recap. Our brains are hardwired to automatically create and entrust these story models based on the information we get. So let's see how that exact process can be twisted into one of the most powerful tricks in storytelling. When we read a book, our brain does the exact same thing it does with reality. It takes the words on the page and builds that controlled hallucination of the story's world, and we trust it implicitly. But what happens when the source of that information, the narrator themselves, can't be trusted? And that, right there, is the magic of the unreliable narrator. It's a storyteller whose version of events is compromised. Someone who, for one reason or another, is just not giving us the straight story. The literary critic who actually coined the term, Wayne C. Booth, made this really great distinction. He said, a reliable narrator basically plays by the rules of the story's world, but an unreliable narrator, they break those rules. They create this gap between the story they're telling you and what's actually true. And it turns out this unreliability can show up in a few different flavors. The scholar William Regan actually identified 4 classic archetypes that you see all the time First, you've got the Picaro. Think of a charming rogue, an anti-hero who you know is exaggerating. Then there's the madman, whose entire reality is warped by their mental state. The clown is a trickster, someone who is deliberately messing with you, playing with the truth. And finally, you have the naive, who is unreliable not because they're trying to trick you, but just because they're innocent or ignorant and they don't fully grasp what's really going on. So, we have this literary device on one side, and then on the other, we have the actual cognitive science, just like Will Storr lays out in his book. Now, let's connect the dots. So why is this technique so incredibly powerful? What is it about being lied to by a narrator that shocks and fascinates us on such a deep, primal level? Well, it's because they're exploiting the exact biological process we use to make sense of everything. It's not just a clever trick. It is a direct hack on your brain's automatic built-in trust in the realities it creates. I mean, think about it this way. You start reading a book. Your brain gets that info and immediately starts building its controlled hallucination of that world. It doesn't second-guess it, it just accepts that model as reality. The unreliable narrator takes total advantage of that automatic trust. They build a world for you that is, in some fundamental way, a lie. And that big twist at the end, that's the feeling of your brain being forced to tear down its entire flawed model and rebuild it from scratch with the truth. It's like a cognitive earthquake. And all of this brings us to one last big question. We've seen how our brains automatically build reality from narratives, and how easily that trust can be messed with in fiction. It kind of makes you wonder, right? What about all the stories we're told every single day, out here in the real world? Whose stories are you trusting? Have you